federal government's $5 billion palliatives as organized labor rejects distribution through state governors, insist that they cannot be trusted. And President Bola Tinubu approves establishment of the presidential CNG initiative for transition to CNG-fueled vehicles. Well, welcome everyone to Politics Today. I am Terry Ikubi. Now, the federal government on Thursday announced $5 billion palliatives to each of the 36 states and the FCT to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy. The Nigeria Labour Congress, however, has kicked against the federal government's move, saying that governors would favor politicians rather than the poor Nigerians that need the $180 billion largesse disbursed to the state governments to the Nigerian citizens. But then, the governor of Borno State, Babagana Zulum, who spoke to State House correspondents yesterday at the end of the National Economic Council meeting, said NEC was seriously concerned about the increasing cost of food items and the increasing cost of transportation, amongst others, as a result of subsidy removal. Take a listen.
In order to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal, the federal government of Nigeria has released 5 trucks of rice to each state last week. Furthermore, in order to cushion the effect of food shortages across the country, the federal government has approved the sum of 5 billion naira to be given to each state for the procurement of 100,000 bags of rice, 100,000 bags of rice, 40,000 bags of maize, and fertilizers. This funding has to be shared with a formula as follows. 52% of this money is given to states as grants, while 48% of the 5 billion naira is to be paid back on an installment basis within a period of 2 years, 20 months, to the CBN by the states and the local government areas in Nigeria.
Meanwhile, to ease the impact of fuel subsidy removal on Nigerians by reducing energy costs, the president today approved the establishment of the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative. And according to a statement signed by the Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the President, Ajurin Gelale, the initiative targets over 11,500 new CNG-enabled vehicles and 55,000 CNG conversion kits for existing PMS-dependent vehicles, while simultaneously bolstering in-country manufacturing, local assembly, and expansive job creation in line with the presidential directive. For more stories, here's your daily political roundup.
Minister of State for Petroleum designate Senator Heineken Lukpobiri today paid an official visit to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the State House in Abuja. The visit, which had the Honorable Minister of FCT designate in attendance, Nyesom Wike, was the first official visit to the President, as the President told the ministers designate about his administration's roadmap for the nation. The Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja has dismissed an appeal brought before it by Senator Smart Adeyemi, seeking to nullify the Kogi State governorship primary of the All Progressives Congress, which produced Mr. Usman Ododo as the party's flag bearer for the November 11 governorship election in the state. The appellate court held that the appeal argued by Mr. Adekunle Oladipo Titoju on behalf of Senator Smart Adeyemi was completely bereft of merit and was thrown out. In a unanimous judgment, the 3-man panel of justices of the court ruled that Mr. Adeyemi, who recently represented Kogi West Senatorial District in the Senate, failed to establish all criminal allegations made against the conduct of the primary election by APC and its leaders. The Ebonyi State governorship election Election Tribunal sitting in Abuja has reserved judgment in the petition filed by the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Ifeanyi Odi, and that of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA, Professor Bernard Odo, after all the parties adopted their written addresses. The candidates of the PDP and APGA are challenging the declaration of the candidates of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Francis Mwifuru, as the winner of the March 2023 governorship election. The petitioners are asking the tribunal to nullify the election of the APC candidate on the grounds that the governor was not a bona fide member of the APC at the time of the election. Ahead of the off-cycle governorship elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states, governors of the All Progressives Congress met with the national chairman of the party, Mr. Abdullahi Ganduje, in Abuja, as they fine-tuned plans for the November 2023 exercise. The meeting also had in attendance the party's governorship candidate for Bayelsa State, Mr. Timi Pre, Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, who's running for a second term, and Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State. The party's candidate for Kogi State, Mr. Usman Ododo, was absent from the meeting.
We had our meetings, part of our consultations, and also used the opportunity to listen to our national chairman.
Ahead of the November governorship election in Imo State, the National Orientation Agency, NOA, is asking relevant stakeholders to promote peace and support the agency's mission to mobilize electorates and ensure credible, free, fair, and non-violent elections. The Director General of the NOA, Mr. Garba Abari, gave this charge in a word in Imo State capital while flagging off the agency's off-season governorship polls sensitization campaign on understanding the new Electoral Act, civil participation, and peace.
There is an obvious need to deepen the understanding of the 2022 Electoral Act, which, by various accounts, has significantly altered the experience of our people at the polling stations.
Well, let's go to our conversation now. It's the 5 billion naira palliatives for each state. And to further understand the idea of the National Economic Council, I'm joined by the Special Advisor on Media and spokesperson to the President, Mr. Ajuri Ngilali. Welcome to Politics Today, Ajuri.
It's always a privilege to be here.
Now, just before we go into the conversation of the 5 billion naira palliatives for each state, I think it's fair to quickly address the statements which you released on the transition to compressed natural gas enabled vehicles. Could you talk briefly as briefly as you can about that?
Absolutely. So, as you know, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is taking a robust approach to ameliorating the difficult conditions in which our people currently find themselves. Obviously, we know that with rising energy costs, there is an immediate need to do everything we can as quickly as we can to crash energy costs in the country, which is why today Mr. President approved the establishment of the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative to be chaired by His Excellency, the Chief of Staff to the President, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. And how it's going to work in effect is that we are going to provide upfront 55,000 CNG conversion kits, which will be targeting specifically at the outset intra-city mass transit systems across all states of the Federation. We recognize that the disproportionate bulk of our people being affected most adversely by rising energy costs, rising PMS costs in particular, are those using mass transit, those using keke napeps, those using Okada. They're feeling it with very low incomes to deal with that. So that is why we're targeting mass transit systems. We are providing these kits to essentially convert PMS-dependent buses, mass transit vehicles into CNG-compliant vehicles at the outset. In addition to that, His Excellency Mr. President has now approved or is approving the zero customs duty and zero VAT on the importation of all CNG conversion kits to immediately ensure the very swift inflow of as many CNG conversion kits into the country, even as we move to locally assemble and locally manufacture the CNG kits, conversion kits over the short to medium term. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, His Excellency Mr. President is also approving a one-stop shop across all states of the Federation in which CNG related industries. These are those who want to establish CNG filling stations, those who want to establish CNG conversion fitting factories, those who want to establish CNG conversion kit production factories, that we put together this one-stop shop in all states of the Federation where you can essentially gather all of your federal and state regulatory compliances and certifications so that you're not having to go through a long gestation period of process and running from one bureaucracy to the other in order to establish these facilities. So we're taking a multi-dimensional approach to this, a thorough one, because of Mr. President's experience as a subnational administrator, a former governor of Lagos State for 8 years. He knows where the shoe pinches the foot, and he knows that many of the interventions that any federal administration wants to make, it's going to either work or fail, depending on how it's applied and implemented at the subnational level, which is why we are focused in on working through bodies such as the National Economic Council, where you have all 36 state governors, where you have, His Excellency the Vice President chairing, to ensure that it's driven at the state level, but in such a way that is guided by private sector participation and guided by the regulation of federal authorities. So it's not as simple as maybe organized labor is making it out to seem, that this is some sort of, cash giveaway or some sort of bonanza that's unchecked and unmonitored where state governments can effectively do whatever they want.
So we hadn't come to the conversation of the 5 billion naira palliatives and labor. But let me ask you this. With regards to the CNG that you talked about, what's the implementation strategy with regards to funding, and what sort of stakeholders will be directly involved in it?
That's a fantastic question, Terry. So let's start with the fact that we've already struck an agreement between the NNPC Limited and NIPCO, which is an indigenous industry player in the oil and gas sector, which effectively is going to see to the establishment of 56 new CNG filling stations across all states of the Federation in 2 phases. The first phase is going to run from approximately now to the end of April 2024, approximately a 9-month period, which will see to the establishment of 21 out of the 56. And then the second phase, which runs from April 2024 to April 2025, 1 year, which will see to the establishment of the next 35 CNG filling stations across all states of the Federation. It's important to note that the NIPCO agreement is just one out of several that we're currently in negotiations with. You already have, certain retail outlets upstream, companies in the sector, such as the NNPC Limited, for example, that has the widest network of retail filling stations in the country, which we can now leverage on to co-locate within those facilities CNG fill-up points, in addition to the existing PMS fill-up points that you find at NNPC filling stations. There is going to be several new outlets that will deal with the demand side of it, right? Making sure you can access the CNG once you've converted your vehicle. But our focus with the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative under Mr. President and under the leadership of His Excellency the Chief of Staff is to ensure that we deal with the demand side, that we have a network across all states of the Federation of mass transit systems that are operating almost exclusively over a period of time, CNG fueled buses. In places like India, for example, there are currently it's currently law in India that mandates mass transit systems to be fueled by CNG. It's actually a mandate. We obviously don't start there, but we can get to the point where we can incentivize mass transit companies with various asset financing packages from the federal government to be able to ensure that they're able to roll out these buses at scale and quickly. 2 things now, quickly as quickly as possible.
Right. Is it clear as to how much the federal government would be contributing financially, despite beyond the partnership that you've talked about? And is there a takeoff date for this yet?
Well, the president had already cited in his most recent address that 100 billion naira had been set aside for the procurement of 3,000 buses. But obviously, with the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative, we're talking about 11,500 buses, which is significantly more across the states. But it's worth noting that this is not a federal giveaway or a state giveaway. This is meticulously arranged, private sector partnership with the federal government. So we're looking at making sure that we can put together a minimum of $250 billion at the outset to be able to provide a counterpart funding mechanism for the private sector to come in with certain financing guarantees, and also tax relief, incentives for not just those who are establishing, CNG fill-up points, but those who are establishing CNG conversion kit fitting factories, as well as CNG conversion kit manufacturing factories, in addition to several other industries such as CNG field bus manufacturing facilities.
Very well, then let's talk about the 5 billion naira palliatives to each state now. You already know that the labor unions are against the implementation through the state governors. And it's not far-fetched. You can recall what happened to the COVID-19 palliatives and concerns regarding bailout funds. So what is the implementation strategy, or perhaps the rationale behind using state governors to distribute these palliatives?
Well, it really comes back to the fact that, and look, earlier in the week, you might recall that there was a threat from the organized labor movement. It's relevant to what I'm about to say in a moment, but there was a threat that there was going to be a nationwide strike without any warning if fuel price went up, for example. And then, of course, on behalf of Mr. President, I came out and announced that there would be no increase in the fuel price as it was threatened by organized labor. The reason why I'm mentioning that is we have seen this tendency that, yes, there is suffering in the land. Yes, times are absolutely difficult, which is why every waking moment that the president spends from morning to night, all he's thinking about is how he's going to, as swiftly and as efficiently as possible, put together as many implementable measures as possible to ameliorate the adverse conditions facing our people, from rising energy costs to rising food costs, etc. This is the focus of our government. But we think it is not helpful to the body politic if we have this perpetual sense of panic and antagonism. That's totally unnecessary. When we can be civil with each other and we can be factual and honest in terms of our engagements with each other. Organized labor must adopt a culture of doing its due diligence and fact-checking and fact-finding before it comes to the public with these belligerent and verbose statements against certain parties. I'm coming to something.
You recall that I drew your attention to the concerns of labor with regard to the COVID-19
No, and that's where I'm going.
So when you talk about fact-finding, what's on ground, which labor is holding on to, is the behavior or attitude of the governors when they were saddled with the responsibility of distributing COVID-19 palliatives, and some state governors till this moment cannot account for bailout funds.
Thank you very much, Terry. That's exactly where I was going. I wanted to lay the groundwork to show that there's this trend that it's a cultural issue that we need to address. This notion that everything has to be a fight. Everything does not have to be a fight. We can respect people, and people can respect people, and groups and organizations can respect each other and still get to conclusions that will positively impact the lives of our people. What I'm saying, in effect, with respect to what you mentioned now, is that, yes, it is true that there has been mismanagement of, federal interventions, with respect to, social investments and some of these things in the past. Certainly, government is a large operation, and you're going to have bad eggs that commit blunders within that. But this is exactly why His Excellency Mr. President said we have to move beyond this notion that the federal government, and specifically Mr. President himself, can stay in an office and from that office essentially ensure that from beginning to the end of a process, it's going to be administered from the federal side. If you try and do that, as we've seen in the past, you're going to have actors along that chain of command that are going to do the wrong thing. So what the president is saying is, let's take more of a bottom-up approach. Let's appreciate the fact that local governments and state governments and the moves that they make directly impact the people. So what we're doing now is this. Yes, the state governments are being empowered to the extent that they are implementing some of the palliatives that we're talking about with respect to the delivery of rice and maize to communities across their states and other supplements that are well known by now. But what we are also doing is, from the federal end, we're ensuring that these funds are not just giveaway grants that don't have to be paid back. First of all, it's a loan facility. So if you're a state government and you know your people are hurting, and by the way, these state governors that the organized labor movement is, painting all 36 of them with the same brush, as if all of them are the same, all of them perform at the same level, all of them have the same competency, we know that's a ridiculous assertion. What we're saying is Nigerians elected these state governors just as they elected the president, and we have to trust the judgment of Nigerians who elected these officers to conduct these activities on their behalf. So it can't just be, at the outset panicking that they can't do it. We have to trust them to do the jobs they were elected to do. But at the same time, it is fair to say that given the history of maladministration in our country, especially with these kinds of palliatives and distribution mechanisms from the federal side, it is fair to say that there needs to be a check, there needs to be a means of monitoring, which is why federal regulators are involved, which is why we have put in place, the palliative distribution. For example, if we're talking about MSME capitalization, aside from the food now, I've touched on energy, touched on food. MSME capitalization is going to be about $300 billion naira combined. That process is going to be distributed through microfinance banks, through the Bank of Industry, and through SMEDAN, who already have, for example, set registers of beneficiaries that they can make digital payments to. So, for example, if we want to make a digital payment from, say, through SMEDAN or through BOI, to the various industries that are going to benefit, to the various micro businesses that are going to benefit. These are direct digital payments. It has nothing to do with the local government. It has nothing to do with the state government. These are direct payments that can be tracked through the BVN.
Let's stay with the issue of the
Yes.
5 billion naira palliatives.
I'm talking about enhancing trust. That's why I mentioned that.
Well, beyond enhancing trust, the concern with regard to how the mode of distribution of these palliatives is not clear yet, especially because the social register has been condemned by the NEC already. So what data would you use to distribute these items?
Okay, so a few things here. Number one, we have, with the state governments, they already have structures in place. The state governments have already conducted their own, social investment programs separate from the federal end. I think there's this kind of misunderstanding in the public domain at the moment that the social investment policy, because it was something that former President Muhammadu Buhari really brought to the national consciousness on a mass scale, that it's kind of a federal thing to do. But that's not the case. For the last several years, you have had state governments with their own articulated social intervention programs. If you go to Borno State, for example, where Professor Babagana Umara Zulum has essentially created a very well-articulated social investment program across not just local governments, down to the wards across this Borno State. Because it was well built. I'm just giving you an example. Because it was well built, he's attracting funding from the World Bank, he's attracting funding from the United Nations, because they were part and parcel of the process of building these social investment distribution systems within the states at the subnational level. My point is that you have similar systems built in places like Kwara, in places like Ebonyi, several states across the Federation. So this is exactly what I mean when I say that we should avoid the tendency toward oversimplification, when we say, oh, state governors can't be trusted, they're all corrupt, they're all incompetent. Organized labor should protect its credibility. And if it wants to do so, it should avoid making blanket statements that even Nigerians know at this point cannot be true.
Ajuri, where's the 185 billion naira coming from?
Fantastic. So we have essentially a packet of 500 billion naira that's going to be sourced from various portfolios within the Central Bank of Nigeria. So for example, on the CNG... Is
that the 500 billion approved by Parliament?
I'm coming, please. Just give me one moment. First of all, many of the portfolios that we're going to be dispersing from had already been approved from a previous parliament, to answer your question. So you have the gas expansion program that has a portfolio of approximately 250 billion within the central bank, which we're going to be able to draw down on, already approved, that we're going to be able to draw down on to be able to facilitate the presidential compressed natural gas initiative in collaboration with the private sector, for example. Then we also have another separate packet for large industries. You recall we talked about the 75 for 75. That's 75 billion naira that's going to be given at 1 billion naira per large industry across all states of the Federation. That is going to be administered by the Bank of Industry through a register that they had independently within their institution, developed over a period of time in collaboration with with international partners. Then in terms of nano, because that deals with large industry, in terms of nano industry, which is very important to us as an administration, because we believe that progressivism is all about bottom-up economic progress and development. So the idea is that with our nano economic intervention, MSME capitalization intervention, what we're going to do is we're selecting through SMEDAN, that's the Small and Medium Scale Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, we're going to essentially provide 1,300 micro businesses in each of every single local government of this country. 1,374 with MSME capital.
We're out of time, but I think this includes the FCT, right?
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
36 states
that controversy should die. The FCT is going to be involved through the FCTA under the Minister of FCT that is incoming.
Very well, Ajero, I'd like to thank you for your time on Politics Today.
Thank you very much. Time's never enough.
Never enough, I must say. We have the NLC president who's raised concerns about the 5 billion naira palliative. Comrade Joe Ajero has found time to have a conversation with us and explain the position of the NLC in details on this matter. Comrade Ajero, are you with us?
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you. The NLC is opposed to the 5 billion naira palliatives of the government. I'd like you to speak more on this. And I also understand that you're concerned about the funding as well.
Well, the details of the 5 billion naira released to states is still not clear, whether it is a loan to the states or it is actually a palliative to the states or to Nigerians. But whichever might be the case, let's assume that it is a palliative and is not loan to the states. You will agree that it is difficult to feel the impact of such amount at a time like this. At a time like this, when the Bureau of Statistics have come up to say that over 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor, you start to wonder, the impact of 185 billion naira to 133 million naira by their admittance, who are multidimensionally poor. And from the time this report was released and now, in fact, the first increase in pump price of petroleum products and the last one, moved a lot of people from the borderline, to a very high level of poverty. Now, if you calculate it, if you do your own arithmetic, you discover that this will not translate to 1,500 naira per person. And you ask, is that the impact? Is that what we really want to achieve? Assuming it is a loan, now what is going to happen? You garbage in and garbage out. Let's simply look at the issue of even if it's 6 trailers loads of rice, there is no state where you share it to the poor, that one person will get a cup of rice. And it's not a question of saying organized labor should get their facts before they talk. We'll talk based on the facts that are pushed out. Because the spokesperson to Mr. President was saying that with regards to our response to the issue of a further increase. In the first increase, the spokesperson to Mr. President didn't address Nigerians there was an increase. It was alleged that it was market forces. In the second increase, the spokesperson to Mr. President did not say a word. He didn't address Nigerians. It was alleged to market forces. And the market forces started speculating again that there will be another increase. And organized labor want market forces, and the spokesperson of Mr. President now address the country. Can't you see confusion? So who is fooling who? Why would the spokesperson of Mr. President address Nigerians when the so-called market forces have taken an action or want to take an action? So I think we should get clearer, and be consistent in some of the things we are doing. If it is 5 billion, I think organized labor, want anybody to do the calculation and tell us how it is going to impact, to Nigerians on what is happening presently. If it is a loan, then too bad.
Mr. Ajeru, the NEC also set up another committee, a committee specifically to meet with the NLC on this matter. Do you think that this is a meeting that should have held before the conclusion from yesterday?
Well, let me just say one or two things about the committee. There are some members of that committee that their inclusion are highly contentious and objectionable. If in that committee, the governor of Imo State is in that committee, then it's objectionable by level. Because for 40 months, a large percentage of Imo workers have not been paid their salary. 40 months. For almost 6 months, the governor has his own NLC he's working with. So why will he come to the national to discuss with us when he doesn't recognize NLC? He had few people who say it's his own NLC. Now, what is he coming for us to learn? Are we going to learn, the aspect of not paying people for 40 months? Well, NLC is out for the engagement, anytime, any day. That's our job.
We would have to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll conclude with you. And then we'll talk to Professor Magnus Bakol, who is an economic and business strategist and former economic advisor to former President Olusegun Obasanjo, as well as the former SDP presidential candidate Adewale Adebayo. Please stay with us. The conversation continues after the break. Welcome back to Politics Today, live from our studios in Abuja. Let's quickly conclude with the NLC president now. You've maintained that you don't trust the governors. You've also said that you're concerned about the funding, 185 billion naira, which is not enough in your own words. So let me ask you this question. NEC has taken this decision, and you are demanding are you demanding that it should be put on hold? And what happens if the initiative goes ahead, especially because funds have already been released, so also have grains? What's the NLC's next move?
Well, like I said, the NEC equally announced a committee they said to interface with labor. As usual, we take all our proposals, to the committee, negotiate, and then equally provide ways we think that this the problems and sufferings of Nigerians could be further ameliorated. So we are ready to work. We are doing our homework to make sure that we go beyond this mere tokenism, and get some permanent relief. And that's why it is cheering to hear that they have coming up with the CNG committees, and we want it to be thorough so that we'll have centers where the CNG people could refill their vehicles. We'll have some factories where even the cylinders could be produced, and all that, so that will facilitate that activity very fast and quickly. If we go into some of those measures, as we have been proposing and bringing to the table of negotiation, we could have gone far, than making proposal a few bags of rice and maybe 2,000 naira per person.
Very well then. Mr. Joe Ajeru, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of a busy schedule to speak with us briefly. Thank you very much. So let's listen to some analysis on this now. Professor Magnus Bakul is an economic and business strategist. He's a former economic advisor to former President Olusegun Obasanjo as well. And then virtually, we're joined by the Social Democratic Party presidential candidate, who's also an analyst, Mr. Adewale Adebayo. Welcome, gentlemen. Prof, you've listened to the labor unions. You've also listened to the explanation, sort of in details, by the special advisor on media and publicity to the president. Are you satisfied with this 5 billion naira initiative of the federal government?
Well, thank you. First of all, very happy to be on your show. Terry, you do a good job. Let's say right away, I mean, listening to the two parties, so to speak, and they're both speaking from their respective perspectives, and I think that Jury did a pretty good job trying to articulate, the position of the government at this time. And I understand the part of labor. I mean, they're looking for more, and they should. But I think that from what I heard the labor president say, I think that there's common ground. I think that he's prepared to work with the committee, he said. So that's good. And the thing is that there is no magic wand. There is nothing magical that the government can just do to correct the problems of decades that we've had in the country. So first of all, I'm happy. I think I congratulate the administration, for scrambling to do what they've tried to do, as staggering as it is in the way that they're going. But nevertheless, they're doing some things. They're getting some things done. The idea of 5 billion, I mean, it could have been 3 billion. It could have been 1 billion. It could have been 50 billion. But I suppose it's in the context of what they have per state. And I think it's a pretty good step. I think it's something positive. And whatever is given to the people, you take it. But it is not something that essentially satisfies the very difficult conditions and situation that we're in. If you take those numbers, if you take the 5 billion, as even the jury said, you can, that's shared into a 52% portion for as grant and 48% as loan. Now, if you do further analysis with that, what you find is that essentially the federal government provides 5 trucks, and the states are to provide 152 trucks of rice, for the people. The 152 trucks of rice come from the 5 billion. Now, simple math of looking at 100,000 bags that states are supposed to buy from this 5 billion, then gives you somewhere like 104,000 bags of rice. And that essentially, if you do the numbers using 5 persons per household, you will get about 50 days of consumption if you get 104,000 households per state taking advantage of this. I know that the math is a little nebulous here, but the important thing is that it lasts only for a while. So then what happens here is that then you have the 48% that is a loan that has to be paid back. But if you do the math, once again, you find that you spend about 4.3 billion naira on this purchase of rice, of 100,000 bags of rice. So then that you're left with 700 million naira. And that's not going to be enough, in my mind, to give you sufficient maize and fertilizers, and especially in the context of the fact that you got to pay it back if you're the states. So there are some issues there that I think that will have to work out.
Okay.
But I think that the important thing that I see that has been realized here is that the federal government is ready to work with states and local government, because they keep talking about it. Is the modalities that's the issue. Now, they have to find a way that, because you see the labor doesn't seem to trust the state and local government.
And then there's also the concern as to the contributions of the state governors as well. I mean, you've seen in recent times, if just a couple of state governors have gone ahead to initiate their own
stuff, yes.
palliatives, but the others have practically kept coming cap in hand. So let me talk to Mr. Adewale Adebayo now. Are you concerned about the timing of this intervention? For many, it's been 3 months since subsidy was removed based on the announcement of the president, and some question why this is coming at this time. Is the timing okay or not?
everything is off, not just the timing. The question is, what are we discussing here? Are they discussing governance? Are they discussing running the economy? Are they discussing poverty alleviation? Are they discussing industrial disputes? Are they discussing the fallout of the removal of subsidy? So these are endless discussions. I hope this is not how they are going to do the next 4 years. There should be clarity. There should be agencies. If you are dealing with poverty, Dr. Parker used to run NAPEC, National Agency for Poverty Eradication and program, whatever it is, or policy at that time, for President Obasanjo's government. That's where you have Kekena Pep and all those things. That was a little systematic an approach to it. I'm not sure they met the target, but that was, at least, there was an agency coordinating government investment in that subset of the social sector. So now, on whose behalf is Labour talking? Is Labour talking on behalf of its members, a member of the LNC and the TUC, or is he talking about on behalf of 1.3 million Nigerians who are in extreme poverty and for whom there is the governor of the state, whom they've elected to govern them in their state? So the governor is representing those people too. Are you talking in terms of local government chairmen, 774 of them, or the councillors who live with the poor? So what I see here is just bickering, where the policy is not clear, there's no white paper. All of these things are made by announcements. And I don't think this is how we run government in 2023. We didn't even run government like this in 1953. So I think what the government needs to do is articulate its program for poverty eradication or alleviation, we want to go that way, and make a case for it. Let's see the blueprint, let's see the white paper, let's see what they are doing. And let them set targets, budget, you can monitor that. When they are dealing with how to handle the impact of fuel subsidy, there are 3 ways they can handle it. One, they can look at providing alternative fueling, which is CNG that they're talking about. It is interesting that the first CNG plant that was supposed to convert vehicles to the use of compressed natural gas was actually commissioned by Governor Tinubu, as it then was, in Lagos. So if you send your reporter to number 8, Rustin Road, which is called Ojoman Road in Lagos now, you will see a flag with the name of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Governor of Lagos, commissioning that time, about 22 years ago or thereabouts. So when you have that kind of situation, it shows to you that the method they are trying to use now, if they are focusing on that, you could get 1 million conversions to CNG in 1 year. If that's what you want to focus on, then you have to come out, make a program for it, and there will be these CNG stations. And the first example you will show is, has the government itself converted its own vehicle to CNG? So if the government is still running on petrol and is pushing CNG, that's a problem. So I don't want to come here and be unfair to anyone, but their message is not clear. So if you are just, I don't want to be an arbiter between Labour and the government, because both Labour and government agreed during the campaign that they were going to remove subsidy. Okay. And there was no program on the part of the government dealing with systematically, this is the number we have now macroeconomically for transport costs, for other input costs. If we remove the subsidy, this is where the number will go to. And if we are going to intervene, this is the amount of money. There's no plan like that. Labour, that was jumping after some political party who also said they want to remove subsidy. If you ask Labour today, what is their own plan? They didn't give it to that political party, and they don't have it now. Other than let us increase minimum wage, let us not let the price go above certain amount.
Mr. Adebayo,
So let me just say this to summarize my approach to it, that the questions are poorly posed, and you can never get a good answer out of it. So what the government needs to do is to stop being a banterer with Labour, go back, run out its own program, come out, and we can discuss these policies. Otherwise, we'll just be, every day they go and hold a meeting and they don't agree, they come on TV, we come and intervene between two of them, but none of them has a solution to the problem.
Very well,
so
then. Your concern about implementation is quite understandable. Mr. Mpako, you've been in government as well, so you understand that government policies most times face implementation problems. And as it stands now, the data with which the distributions will be made has been called to question. You heard a jury say that they're relying on the state governors to implement perhaps the data that they have collected. Do you think that that is implementable?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me thank Mr. Debayo for his comments and also alluding to some of the work that we did, I believe, excellently at the National Poverty Eradication Program, NAPEP, at the time. But to come to your question, I think that they need to go find a different way of collecting the data on poor people. If you look at this issue of distribution of rice, I'll be hard-pressed to find how they distribute it. How do you find 104,000 households by state, given the sort of data that I believe the states have at this point? I think that some of the data that we have may have been politically skewed, and I think that there are very transparent ways of getting data. We know there are some methods that we ourselves use when I was at NAPEP, where people collect the data at the village level, and it's transparent, and I won't have time now to go into it, but I can tell you right away, but there is an apolitical way of collecting the data transparently. I have tried to mention this to a couple of states that have attempted to reach me on this, and I think that they can do it, but I think that they need a new register, that is transparent, that is done properly, that people can believe. That's the problem that Labour has. That's the problem that people have, not trusting the data that they have, the register that they have. So I think it would do well for this administration to try to find a good way to try to do that. I believe that they can do. They have time to do it. The method that I have in mind, you could get that register done in at most 3 weeks. You could do it in 2 weeks. It's pretty simple and straightforward. But I want to say that in light of what Mr. Adebayo was saying, I commend this administration, not a spokesman for the administration, but I commend it on, in the first place, appointing a minister for poverty alleviation. This is really, in fact, I give my kudos to the president for this, because something I've been demanding for a long time. It was amazing that we scrapped the National Poverty Eradication Program when poverty is the #1 issue that all of Africa faces. So I commend the president for that. And so in line with what Mr. Adebayo was saying, I think that what we're looking at right now are palliatives, temporary issues. I don't believe that this is the method that the administration is going to be using for the next 4 years. If that's the case, it would be a very deficient way of pursuing a program of transforming the economy and causing the country to start to experience very strong economic growth and development. I think that because we have a poverty alleviation program, I'm hoping that, and I think we got the right person in there too, Dr. Beda Edu, in the sense that she's a human capital person. It is, and I say this everywhere, the #1 reason you have poverty anywhere is because of the deficiency of human capital. She's been working in the area of health. She understands the matter of education, the acquisition of skills. So going forward, long term, we need to be able to train our people to be able to produce the goods and services that the people of the world want. The problem we have with the exchange rate today, basically, the core of the problem that facing the country today is that we cannot produce goods and services that the people of the world want. The only thing that we ship out, for which we get dollars, is crude oil. And you can't survive just on that. So the administration has to hunker down to understand that what they are doing now is just mere palliatives. This is a temporary thing. As I just said, the relief that they have for the people now will last at best 2 months. So after that, what next? So we got to go back to the drawing board. So I think we got to get right away to the fact of recognizing that human capital development is the way. We've got to train our people on how to produce goods and services. Now, on the issue of CNG, I have been preaching CNG for the longest time. You can use CNG to power homes and workplaces. You can use it not only for vehicles, but I'm happy that the administration is focusing on vehicles. The administration cannot do it by itself, though. And I think I was happy to hear from my jury that they're going to be doing it in collaboration with the private sector. I think that also more research has to be brought into the picture at universities. There has to be this that I call a gap. The government, academia, and the private sector. We got to get these guys together to solve the problems of the nation. One thing that the federal government has not been able to do that well over time is to bring people together to solve problems, especially involving the private sector and involving universities. The federal government often thinks that they can do it by themselves, but I know that they cannot. And so if we pursue this thinking that we're just going to go through SMEDA, we're going to go through such and such agency and get it done, I don't believe that that's going to work. Right. I think we got to be able to use the private sector, use academia, and if we do so, I think we could do pretty
Very
well.
well, then let's wrap the conversation up with Mr. Adebayo now. Listening to the spokesperson of the president, he talked about how encouraging how encouraging it would be if with the 52% loan and 48% grant for the state governments to ensure the implementation of this. Do you think that this is encouraging enough with regard to how monitoring the process and ensuring that it is implemented to the letter, because the governors know that they have to repay the loan?
You see, it's their own method. There's a method. It's the breadth of their thinking. But if you look at our governance, each time we try to intervene in problems, we don't even go back to the method used successfully in the past. Look at Shagari. When we had problems of dealing with the crisis of the collapse of our currency, the collapse of our oil earnings, there was an agency set up by Shagari called National Supply. What they did was to create a system, even though they were much criticized at that time, but they created a system where prices of essential goods fell generally. This idea of hand-me-down, where you go and give somebody one mudu of rice, one cup of, it is not sustainable. What the government needs to do, all of them combined together, all the government at 3 levels, is come up, create a certain fund, and go out and deal with how to bring the prices down. Secondly, if you look at, we don't have enough supply of rice in the country. We don't have enough supply of these grains. That's why the prices are high, demand and supply. Now, when the government is now intervening and buying for a specific number of people, you are raising prices for the others who are not covered by that program. It is better for you to at least be at the level where Shagari was with national supply and then improve on it with local production. Secondly, how can you be doing interventions in reaction to disturbances in the market over subsidy removal? And what you are doing is inferior to Sure P.
Time really does fly, Mr. Adebayo.
So the conclusion of this is that we need to be more efficient because it's public money you are spending, and spending in a way that's going to have an economic effect. I understand it's a temporary measure, but we need to start letting them be awake to that, because what is temporary tends to become permanent in Nigeria.
Very well, then I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Adewole Adebayo, former presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party. Thank you very much for your time on the program.
Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
Thank you also to Professor Magnus Bakol. He's an economic and business strategist and former economic advisor to former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Thank you very much. And just before we go, the Edo State House of Assembly has distanced itself from the purported impeachment of Edo State Deputy Governor Mr. Philip Shaibu, which has been making the rounds recently. The Speaker of the Edo State House of Assembly, Blessing Agbebakus, disclosed this at the Government House as he insists that Governor Godwin Obaseki has never raised the issue with the House. He adds that the Assembly itself had never contemplated removing the Deputy Governor at any point. And that's Politics Today. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.